Margaret Warner reports on U.S. efforts to strengthen Pakistan in its fight with the Taliban.
In Pakistan's Swat Valley, villagers fled renewed fighting today between government forces and Taliban militants who've taken over there. Officials fear that as many as 500,000 people could flee the area close to the capital, Islamabad. The deteriorating security picture has sharpened Washington's attention on the grinding poverty in Pakistan, collapsing schools, hungry children, and a government seen as not delivering for its people.
I am gravely concerned about the situation in Pakistan. The civilian government there right now is very fragile and don't seem to have the capacity to deliver basic services, schools, healthcare, rule of law, a judicial system that works for the majority of people. And so as a consequence, it is very difficult for them to gain the support and the loyalty of their people. So we need to help Pakistan, help Pakistanis.
So the White House is pushing on two tracks. It wants Congress to boost U.S. military aid for Pakistan, and it's also asking Congress to launch a hefty civilian aid program, $1.5 billion a year for 5 years, to build up infrastructure, education, and health for ordinary Pakistanis.
We cannot do anything other than try to help stabilize Pakistan in the face of the massive challenges it faces.
Ambassador Richard Holbrooke is the president's point man for Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Foreign assistance is critical in that process, both for what it can do to help Pakistan overcome the brutal efforts of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and other extremist groups, and for the good it'll do for the region itself.
Hussein Haqqani, Pakistan's ambassador to Washington, agrees his country urgently needs more civilian aid.
48% of Pakistani school-going age children do not go to school. So in an environment like that, it's easier for extremists to recruit based on the fact that people do not have anything to live for in terms of hope. And so a civilian aid package, a multi-year civilian aid package, is meant to assure the people of Pakistan that the United States is their friend. It's interested in giving them education, health care, and a future for their children.
But other voices in Washington are questioning whether the money will be spent as intended or be siphoned off by corruption and graft.
I have a lot of doubts about whether at the end of it, it's going to be effective.
Christine Fair is an analyst at the RAND Research Organization. Fluent in Urdu, she travels frequently to Pakistan.
There have been a number of non-military programs. It's not clear that Pakistanis have seen value. Some people outright say, we can't find the money. We gave the money to the Pakistanis. We don't know where the monies went for some of these programs.
And she doesn't think replacing years of military rule with the newly elected civilian government has changed the basic political culture.
I don't see real, genuine reformers. I see political parties that are mired in patronage. They're not interested in providing government services. They are interested in maximizing personal gain. And without a genuine reformer in these ministries and institutions where this money is supposed to go, I don't see how we're going to see a subsequently different outcome.
House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Howard Berman agrees with that diagnosis.
We've sent money in the past. It has been stolen. It has not been spent on the purposes that it was intended for. So we don't want to go through that again. And that's why in this legislation we focus on monitoring, on accountability, on oversight. We want to know where every dollar is going and that it's being used for the purposes that we appropriated it.
In all government spending, there is always the prospect of either waste or corruption.
Pakistani Ambassador Haqqani acknowledges the possibility of graft and corruption, but says the problem is exaggerated.
To me, seems to misplace priorities. You have an insurgency here, you have a potential threat to global security here, there are young people with no hope and no future joining the ranks of the militants and the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda, and instead of focusing on the main factor, which is this spirit, you get obsessed about methods of spending the money.
It may not be an obsession, but on Capitol Hill there is deep concern about how the Pakistani aid will be spent this time and whether there should be U.S. strings attached to control it. At a House hearing today before Chairman Berman's committee, members voiced alarm at Islamabad's ineffectiveness in dealing with a rapidly deteriorating situation.
It appears to many of us that Pakistan is at a tipping point, and we need to do whatever we can to make sure it goes the right way.
Let me be blunt. Pakistan's pants are on fire. President Zardari has said the right things regarding counterterrorism, but in practice his government's response has been slow, weak, and ineffective.
Berman's aid bill tries to buck up the Pakistani government's performance. It includes a long list of expectations on the civilian aid side, among them calling on Pakistan to comply with international accounting standards and close religious schools or madrasas with links to terrorism. And it imposes outright conditions on the military aid. Assistance would be withheld unless President Obama certifies that Pakistan has ended support for extremist groups targeting U.S. forces or neighbors Afghanistan or India, closed terrorist camps inside Pakistan, and is helping the U.S. shut down Pakistani networks that have shared the country's nuclear know-how with other nations. At today's hearing, Congressman Dana Rohrabacher said the aid should be conditioned on the U.S. getting access to scientist A.Q. Khan, the father of Pakistan's nuclear bomb program, who sold the technology secretly abroad.
There are leaders in Pakistan who oppose our getting to the real facts concerning A.Q. Khan. Then those people are not our friends.
Congressman, as we speak, and as Chairman Berman pointed out at the beginning, the enemy of our nation, as well as Pakistan, is active in the field not too far from the capital. We need to help Pakistan, and we need to weigh the help against the accountability issues to find the right balance.
The proposed conditions have provoked a backlash in Pakistan.
It's like asking for a prenup before even proposing. And I think that basically does not create faith, that does not create understanding, and that certainly does not win hearts and minds.
Given the track record, why should the U.S. Congress or the U.S. taxpayer trust the Pakistani government to make sure that all this money isn't stolen?
I think that the question of how the money will be spent should be entrusted to the elected leadership of Pakistan. I think this attitude that somehow our oversight is superior to your oversight is something that needs to be reconsidered.
Not so fast, says Berman.
We're not trying to impose our notions on them. They have accepted that this is the purpose for which they are going to operate and the commitments they have made, and we just want to hold them to those commitments.
And the Pakistanis are saying, fine, that's true, so let us handle it.
And somebody has to see whether they're doing it.
But given how unpopular the shaky new Pakistani government is, the White House is resisting moves to impose congressional conditions on the aid.
I am perfectly sympathetic to their objective, and many of these conditions are perfectly rational. But if you attach too many conditions, you can end up with a disastrous outcome in which the very thing you're trying to do is undermined by the too onerous a set of conditions.
Debate over this will continue on Capitol Hill and will no doubt come up in Pakistan President Zardari's meetings in Washington this week. But all the players seem agreed on one thing. As matters seem to go from bad to worse in Pakistan, doing nothing is not an option.
Margaret was in that congressional hearing today as lawmakers expressed their alarm about the situation in Pakistan. It comes on the eve of President Obama's meeting with the leaders of the Pakistan and Afghanistan at the White House tomorrow. Margaret, it seems to me that up in the Hill today there was a fair amount of skepticism. So what was it that Ambassador Holbrooke was trying to do?
Well, Gwen, as we heard, there were a number of fire references at this hearing, and he was there as a fireman to put out the fire, for instance, to impose a lot of conditions anyway on this aid, and also to put out this sort of gnawing sense on Capitol Hill that
the stability of Pakistan has become so precarious that the Obama administration perhaps is throwing good money after bad and going in there in a big way. So you heard Ambassador Holbrooke say today, this state is not on the verge of collapse. It is under a lot of economic and political and social pressures, but Pakistan's not a failed state. Finally, he had to put out another fire, which is back in Pakistan. The Pakistani press has been full of reports that the Obama administration is about to abandon Zardari in favor of his chief rival, arch rival Nawaz Sharif. So,
is there anything to support that notion?
There is growing concern, actually, in the Obama administration that Zardari's popularity numbers are so low, lower than Musharraf's were, military leader Musharraf's before he was ousted, that in fact he is in a precarious situation. But Holbrooke's message today was, this is the elected government. We have a strategic strategic interest in the success of this elected government.
So that political part may play some backdrop to tomorrow's meetings,
yes.
Certainly at the White House. So were there questions that the members of Congress brought to today to ask Ambassador Holbrooke that perhaps he wasn't prepared to answer?
I would say he sidestepped a number of concerns. I mean, one was how confident is the administration that the nuclear sites and arsenal of Pakistan are really safe, given that the Taliban seems to be taking over more territory. Another was, and we've all asked this question of Ambassador Holbrooke ourselves, what does he think that members of the intelligence services in Pakistan are still supporting elements of the Taliban and al-Qaeda? And another one he didn't really answer was whether this new army offensive in the Swat Valley means that the Pakistani government is now ready to call off the deal and go in there and clean them out, or something less than that.
Now, to answer any one of those questions would do what? Would put the administration farther than it's able to go, or put it in a place that simply doesn't know the answers yet?
It may be a combination of both, but it would draw him and the administration into publicly expressing doubts about the commitment of the Pakistani government. And on one particular answer, he said publicly, even if, it had to do with supporting somebody else, supporting Nawaz Sharif, and he said, for me to say anything like that publicly would totally undercut the government of Pakistan and essentially become a self-fulfilling prophecy. That was true on a lot of these questions. I think he did not want to say things that would completely telegraph a lack of confidence in Zardari.
So Ambassador Holbrooke went to the Hill today to try to rebuild confidence in this idea that we had no choice, the U.S. has no choice but to support Pakistan, to support the current government. Was it clear at all by the end of this hearing that he had accomplished what he set out to do, or were the lawmakers' deep-seated worries still in place?
I think their worries are very much still in place. At the same time, even those that we just showed raising questions all said, Ambassador Holbrooke, we share your view and Congressman Berman's view that we need a bill like this. They all know that Pakistan can't be walked away from by the U.S. And Holbrooke, in fact, made a point of saying, I've heard a lot of talk about Vietnam here. There are some parallels. But the difference is in Vietnam, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese were not out to attack the U.S. homeland. Here in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the enemy there does have the U.S. in its targets, and essentially we just cannot walk away. That was his message.
Okay, Margaret Warner, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Gwen.